Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting, very different little knife. This is the Spyderco Kahr Delica. First off, I want to thank my buddy John for sending this guy along. I've looked at this a bunch of times, and I've never quite pulled the trigger, but it's a cool little knife, and I'm glad I got a chance to check it out, so thanks, John. And let's do a little Spyderco size comparison here. Of course, I should compare the Delica to the Delica. But, I mean, that's not just being trite. If we do a direct on top of each other comparison, you can see that the blade is basically the same thing, excepting the saber grind, just with a little bit more length on the official Delica there. And so, there you go. Also, of course, we'll compare this to the Ontario Rat number 2 and your Rat number 1, because always, and, yeah, I think that ought to suffice for a size comparison there. Next thing I want to say, Kahr Arms, it's actually a pistol-making brand. They may make other things. I just know make pistols. And this is produced in collaboration with them. And this is discontinued-ish. What I mean by that is you can still buy them from Kahr Arms, but they're starting to get harder to find at other knife retailer manufacturers. So if you want one of these, you might well pick one up here quickly. Another thing to highlight is that this is an aftermarket edge. Apparently it's by Spade Knife Works, who's a sharpener, who I've mentioned a couple of times on the channel. Nice guy. And then finally, because this is at its core a Spyderco Delica, and I have reviewed and discussed the Spyderco Delica to death, I'm just going to talk about the things that differentiate this from the Delica on the good side and on the bad side. Check my Delica review, I'll link it over in the corner here, for more details on the full knife itself, but I'm just going to kind of more do comparing and contrasting here. So let's talk about what makes it better than Delica, and then talk about what makes it a little bit worse than your plain Delica. All right, here we go. Okay, so on the good side, relative to your conventional Delica here, I gotta say, I do love the color. Absolutely. This kind of dark blue, Prussian blue thing, spectacular. I'd buy a regular one in that all day long. Next thing, because they've lopped off the tip of the blade, you get something that's a little bit more Wharncliffey. And that can be very nice for kind of X-Acto-style press-in cuts like that. That can be nice. Not a big deal, and not a huge improvement, but it is something that's nice to see. The blade on this guy, where it's been cut off, has been crowned very slightly, which surprised me a little bit. I mean, you can see that there is a rounding to this rather than just a flat line, and, you know, it's not a big deal, but it is a nice little thing to see, and to notice that they've done that skillfully. And then finally, or not quite finally, it is actually a little bit nicer to carry than your regular one, just because it's a little bit thinner at the top in a tip-down carry position. You can see here that this guy there is not much going on in your pocket here, especially at the top where you're going to be constricted trying to reach past it to get out of your pocket. The regular Delica is fine, but this is a slight improvement even on the Delica, which is good. And then finally, and maybe the biggest reason why this knife should exist, is the length of it. The length of this guy is 2.5 inches. Actually slightly underneath. And that is a magic number in a lot of municipalities. A lot of places are, scared of the world, and so you're not allowed to carry knives over 2.5 inches. So this will be right under that line, and so that makes this knife legal, and I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, but I believe that makes this legal in Boston and Cleveland and some other cities with those 2.5-inch laws. Again, talk to a lawyer. I am not that at all. But still, the fact that you've now got a Delica option, which is a great knife that you can carry in these very restrictive areas, is a beautiful thing. And so those are the improvements. It's under 2.5 inches, which makes it legal in more places. It's slightly nicer in the pocket than the already nice in the pocket Delica. The blade is slightly crowned there. It's a little Wharncliffey, and I love the color. Let's talk about where it's gone slightly downhill. Look, on the bad side, first off, there is not an improvement in the steel here. This is VG10, this is VG10. VG10's fine, it's okay, it's good to go, but if I'm going to pay more money, I kind of want more steel. Not a big deal, though. It's a nitpick. Other nitpick is that the handle is identically sized to the original. In some ways, ergonomically speaking, this is good. The original handle is solid, it's good to go. But the thing is, if you're thinking, oh, smaller blade means smaller Delica, no, it's just a smaller blade. There's just a bunch of empty space up in the handle here, which is itself a little bit wacky. Next thing, I'm not a huge fan of the blasted blade on this guy. You can see that instead of a belt sort of finish, the machine finish, here you've got a matte blasted sort of finish. And, you know, on VG10, it's not so bad, but on other steels, that can actually lead to problems with corrosion because you've increased the surface area a little bit there. VG10 is not a really corrody steel, so I'm not concerned, but I tend to prefer a less matte finish on a blade, and I certainly don't love blasting. Next thing, I really don't like the Kahr billboarding on this. That is really big, and it doesn't need to be big there, or frankly there at all. I mean, I guess maybe they want something on there, but just put the freaking K in the corner or something. That seems a little bit much and a little bit big to me. Getting into more substantial issues here, the saber grind on this guy is not something I love. You can see here that the grind only extends up about this far, as opposed to on the conventional full flat round Delica. You can see it goes all the way up to the top. All Delicas used to be like this, but they've now moved to full flat grind for better slicing. But unfortunately, using the saber grind there, although this still slices fine, and especially if you've thinned out the edges, this one has been here, it's still less than ideal in a lot of ways. I don't tend to love the saber grind, and so you're going to lose a little slicing performance. Then finally, on the bad side, this is actually $30 more expensive than the original Delica. $60 versus $90. The way somebody in the Spyderco forums put it is, it's cheaper to buy a regular Delica and a file, which is cute. But still, it reflects the fact that you're paying more money for a little less blade, with everything else pretty much being the same, excepting an ugly corporate logo on the back of it there. So, to me, that's what's bad here, is that the price is higher, the saber grind is making it a little less slicey. I don't love the blasting on the blade. The handle is the same size, which is good and bad. The Kahr Ram's billboarding is ugly as sin, and there is a lack of steel improvement here. Let's talk about the final conclusions for this knife. Look, final conclusions here. I mean, at some level, this is a Delica, and that's a great thing. It's still lightweight, it's still easy to carry, it's still very nice in the hand. It's just a slightly shorter blade that's a little bit more Warncliffy and a little less slicey. And so fundamentally, what the best thing that this knife is a way to carry a Spyderco Delica when the size of the regular one won't work due to your local laws. And so Kahr has given us a ready-made solution. I mean, you can always go the regular Delica and a belt sander route, and that way you actually still get the full flat grind, and you manage to miss out on the crappy billboarding and bead blast, save a little cash, but still, they've given you one of these guys ready-made. It does come at the cost. Like I said, the steel's the same. It's a little less slicey because it's not full flat, and you're paying a little bit more money, but you know what? It's fine. So that's the final conclusion. The Kahr Ram's Delica is fine, and so if you need a shorter Delica and you don't want to do it yourself, or you love the color, or you just don't mind spending the cash, well, you know what? It's a fine knife, and you might consider parking this car in your collection. Okay. Anyways, hope this has been interesting, that I treated the subject delicately, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.